Hello, students. Good morning to you all. And today we will be doing the novel. We have already completed R.K. Narayan's novel, The Guide, and now we'll do Jane Eyre, written by Charlotte Bronte. But before I start with the novel, I would like to give you a historical background of Victorian age. Because Charlotte Bronte is a novelist of Victorian age. I would like to give you a brief historical background. So, in the year 1837, Queen Victoria ascended the throne of Great Britain and Ireland. She served for a period of 64 years till her death in 1901. That is, she ruled from 1837 to 1901, and it is one of the longest reigns in the history of England. The period was marked by many important social and historical changes that altered the nation in many ways. The population nearly doubled, and the British Empire expanded extensively, and technological and industrial progress helped Britain become the most powerful country in the world. So, let's see what are the chief characteristics of Victorian period. While the country saw economic progress, poverty and exploitation were equally a part of it. That's industrialization was growing at a very good speed, but due to that, there was a lot of poverty also. The gap between the rich and the poor increased significantly, and the drive for material and commercial success was seen to propagate a kind of moral decay in the society itself. So, the changing landscape of the country was another concern. While the earlier phase of Romanticism saw a celebration of the countryside and the rich landscape of the flora and the fauna, the Victorian era saw a changing of the landscape to the one burgeoning industries and factories. Now, you have studied in second year the poems written by Romantic poets, and there is a lot of love and appreciation for nature and countryside. But with this Victorian era and with the progress of industrialization, they saw springing of a lot of industries and factories. While the poor were exploited by their labor, the period witnessed the rise of the bourgeois. Bourgeois is the middle class due to the increasing trade between Britain and its colonies, and the Reform Bill of 1832 strengthened their hold. There was also a shift from the romantic ideals of the previous age towards a more realistic acceptance and depiction of society. As we have seen that in the romantic ideals, they have shifted from the romantic ideals and they have moved towards a more realistic acceptance of society. One of the most important factors that defined the age was its stress on morality, यानी जो नैतिकता है उस पर बहुत ज़्यादा स्ट्रेस था. Strict societal codes were enforced and certain activities were openly looked down upon. And these codes were even harsher for women. A feminine code of conduct was levied on them, which described every aspect of their being, from the proper apparels, that is, proper dresses, and how to converse. Everything had rules. कि कैसे पहनना है, कैसे उनको बातचीत करनी है. There were strict rules for the women to be followed. And the role of women was mostly that of being angels of the house and restricted to domestic confines, यानी सिर्फ घर में ही रहना, बाहर नहीं निकलना. Professionally, very few options were available to them, as a woman could neither become a governess or a teacher, could either become a governess or a teacher in the rich households. Very few options. अगर नौकरी भी करनी है तो क्या है? They could become only a governess. Governess कौन होता है? Governess is actually a lady who looks after the children of the rich people, or a teacher in the rich household. Hence, they were financially dependent on their husbands and fathers, and it led to a commercialization of the institution of marriage. So, this is the historical background of the society. Now, let's focus on the characteristics of the Victorian novels. कि Victorian novels कैसी हुआ करती थी. Victorian era is seen as a link between the Romanticism of the 18th century and the realism of the 20th century. The novel as a genre rose to entertain the rising middle class and to depict the contemporary life in a changing society. Now, from poetry, पहले poetry को बहुत importance दी जाती थी. Now, the importance of poetry declined gradually and novels started becoming very popular. Although the novel had been in development since the 18th century with the works of Daniel Defoe and Henry Fielding, Laurence Sterne and Samuel Richardson, and others, it was in this period that the novel got mass acceptance and readership. During this time, during the Victorian times, the novels became very popular. The growth of the cities, a ready domestic market and one in the overseas colonies, and an increase in printing and publishing houses facilitated the growth of a novel as a form. So, in the year 1870, an Education Act was passed, which made education an easy access to the masses. Furthermore, increasing literacy rates among the population. That is, education started taking a good hold, or you can say priority, for the people. So, certain jobs required a certain level of reading ability, and simple novels catered to this by becoming a device to practice reading. Also, the time of the daily commute to work for men and the time alone at home for women could be filled by reading, which now became a leisure activity. And as a response to the latter, the demand for fiction rose substantially. That is, men working in the factories, when they are going, they had time, and women, they used to stay at home, and when they used to complete their work, get free time, they could enjoy the novels. So the novels of the age mostly had a moral strain in them, with a belief in the innate goodness of human nature. इसमें नैतिकतावाद बहुत ज़्यादा हुआ करता था उन novels में. The characters were well rounded, and the protagonist usually belonged to a middle class society who struggled to create a niche for himself in the industrial and mercantile world. The stress was on realism and an attempt to describe the daily struggles of ordinary men that the middle class reader would associate with. Now, actually, these novels, they actually focused on the middle class. They were about the middle class people. So, the moral tangents were perhaps an attempt to rescue the moral degradation prevalent in the society, and supplied the audience with hope and positivity. So these moral angels allowed for inclusion of larger debates in the fictions, like the ones surrounding the women question, marriage, progress, education, industrial revolution. So these new roles for women were created because of the resultant of the economic market, and their voice, which was earlier not given cadence or which was not heard, was now being spotted and recognized, and novels became the means where the domestic confinement of women was questioned. That is, through novels, actually, women's questioned their domestic confinement. Domestic confinement means जो घर में जो एक तरह से कैद रहती थी वो they started questioning it. उस पर प्रश्नवाचक चिन्ह लगा दिया कि why it is that. So novels reflecting the larger questions surrounding women, like those of their roles and duties. And in the later half of the century, Married Women's Property Act was passed, and women's suffrage became an important point of debate, and poverty and other economic reasons challenged the traditional roles of women. The novel as a form became the medium where such concerns were raised. जैसे अभी अपना मूवीज़ के द्वारा, like through the movies we ask questions about social problems and we depict or we show what is happening in the society. Our movies reflect, or you can say the movies are the mirrors of the society. At that time, the novels had this function to do. So, Charlotte Bronte, she was also one of them. And now I'll introduce, or maybe in my next session, I will give you an introduction of Charlotte Bronte and introduction to Jane Eyre, her novel. So, this is all for today. Have a good day. Thank you.